Treasure Island, Chapter 20. Silver's Embassy. Sure enough, there were two men just outside the stockade, one of them waving a white cloth, the other, no less a person than Silver himself, standing placidly by. It was still quite early in the coldest morning that I think I ever was abroad in, a chill that pierced into the marrow. The sky was bright and cloudless overhead, and the tops of the trees shone rosily in the sun. But where Silver stood with his lieutenant, all was still in the shadow, and they waded knee deep in a low white vapor that had crawled during the night out of the morass. The chill and the vapor, taken together, told a poor tale of the island. It was plainly a damp, feverish, unhealthy spot. "Keep indoors, men," said the captain. "10 to 1 this is a trick." Then he hailed the buccaneer. "Who goes? Stand or we fire." "Flag of truce," cried Silver. The captain was in his porch, keeping himself carefully out of the way of the treacherous shot, should any be intended. He turned and spoke to us. "Doctor's watch on the lookout. Dr. Levesi, take the north side. If you please, Jim, the east, Gray, the west. Then watch below. All hands to load muskets. Lively men and careful." Then he turned again to the mutineers. "And what do you want with your flag of truce?" he cried. This time it was the other man who replied. "Captain Silver, sir, to come aboard and make terms," he shouted. "Captain Silver? Don't know him. Who's he?" cried the captain, and we could hear him adding to himself, "Captain, is it? My heart, here's a promotion." Long John answered for himself. "Me, sir. These poor lads have chosen me captain, and after your desertion, sir," laying a particular emphasis upon the word desertion. "We're willing to submit if we can come to terms, and no bones about that. All I ask is your word, Captain Smollett, to let me safe and sound out of this here stockade, and 1 minute to get out of shot before a gun is fired." "My man," said Captain Smollett, "I have not the slightest desire to talk to you. If you wish to talk to me, you can come. That's all. If there's any treachery, it will be on your side, and the Lord help you." "That's enough, Captain," shouted Long John cheerily. "A word from you's enough. I know a gentleman, and you may lay to that." We could see the man who carried the flag of truce attempting to hold Silver back. Nor was that wonderful, seeing how cavalier had been the captain's answer. But Silver laughed at him aloud and slapped him on the back as if the idea of alarm had been absurd. Then he advanced to the stockade, threw over his crutch, got a leg up, and with great vigor and skill, succeeded in surmounting the fence and dropping safely to the other side. I will confess that I was far too much taken up with what was going on to be of the slightest use as a sentry. Indeed, I had already deserted my eastern loophole and crept up behind the captain, who had now seated himself on the threshold with his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands, and his eyes fixed on the water as it bubbled out of the old iron kettle in the sand. He was whistling "Come Lasses and Lads." Silver had a terrible hard work getting up the knoll. What with the steepness of the incline, the thick tree stumps, and the soft sand, he and his crutch were as helpless as the ship in stays. But he stuck to it like a man in silence, and at last arrived before the captain, with whom he saluted in the handsomest style. He was tricked out in his best. An immense blue coat, thick with brass buttons, hung as low to his knees, and a fine laced hat was set on the back of his head. "Here you are, my man," said the captain, raising his head. "You'd better sit down." "You ain't a-going to let me inside, Captain?" complained Long John. "It's main cold morning, to be sure, to sit outside upon the sand." "Why, Silver," said the captain, "if you had pleased to be an honest man, then you might have been sitting in your galley. It's your own doing. You're either my ship's cook, and then you were treated handsome, or Captain Silver, a common mutineer and pirate, and then you can go hang." "Well, well, Captain," returned the sea cook, sitting down as he was bidden on the sand. "You have to give me a hand up again, that's all. A sweet pretty place you have of it here. Ah, there's Jim. The top of the morning to you, Jim. Doctor, here's my service. Why, there you're all get together like a happy family, in a manner of speaking. If you have anything to say, my man, better say it." "Right you are, Captain Smollett," replied Silver. "Duty is duty, to be sure." "Well, now, you look here. This was a good lay of yours last night. I don't deny it was a good lay. Some of you pretty handy with a handspike end. And I'll neither deny but what some of my people was shook. Maybe all was shook. Maybe I was shook myself. Maybe that's why I'm here for terms. But you mark me, Captain, it won't do twice, by thunder. We'll have to do sentry go and ease off at a point or so on the rum. Maybe you think we're all sheet in the wind's eye, but I'll tell you I was sober. I was the only dog tired. If I'd woke a second sooner, I'd caught you in the act, I would. He wasn't dead when I got around to him, not he. Well, says Captain Smollett, as cool as can be. All that Silver said was a riddle to him, but you would never have guessed it from his tone. As for me, I began to have an inkling. Ben Gunn's last words came back to my mind, and I began to suppose that he had paid the buccaneers a visit while they all lay drunk together round their fire. And I reckoned up with glee that we only had 14 enemies to deal with. Well, here it is, said Silver. We want that treasure, and we'll have it. That's our point. You would just as soon save your lives, I reckon, and that's what yours. You have a chart, haven't you? That as may be, replied the captain. Oh, well, you have, I know that, returned Long John. You needn't be so husky with a man. There ain't a particle of service in that, and you may lay to it. What I mean is, we want your chart. Now, I never meant you no harm myself. That wouldn't do with me, my man, interrupted the captain. We know exactly what you meant to do, and we don't care. For now, you see, you can't do it. And the captain looked at him calmly and proceeded to fill a pipe. If Abe Gray, Silver broke out. Avast there, cried Smollett. Gray told me nothing, and I asked him nothing, and that's more. I would see you and him and this whole island blown clean out of the water into blazes first. So there's my mind to you, my man, on that. This little whiff of temper seemed to cool Silver down. He had been growing nettled before, but now he pulled himself together. Like enough, he said, I would see no limits to what a gentleman might consider ship-shape, or might not, as the case were. And seeing how you are all about to take a pipe, Captain, I'll make so free as to do likewise. And he filled his pipe and lighted it, and with the two men sat silently smoking for quite a while, now looking at each other in the face, now stopping their tobacco, now leaning forward to spit. It was as good as the play to see them. Now, resumed Silver, here it is. You give us a chart to get the treasure by and drop shooting poor seamen and stoving in heads while asleep. You do that and we'll offer you a choice. Either you come aboard once the treasure's shipped, and then I'll give you my affidavy, upon my word of honor, to clap you somewhere safe ashore. Or if that ain't to your fancy, some of my hands being rough and having old scores on account of hazing, then you can stay here, you can. We'll divide the stores with you man for man, and I'll give you my affidavy, as before, to speak the first ship I sight, and send them here to pick you up. Now you'll own that's talking. Handsomer you couldn't look to get now, you. And I hope, raising his voice, that all hands in this here blockhouse will overhaul my words. For what I spoke to what is spoke to one is spoke to all. Captain Smollett rose from his seat and knocked out the ashes of the pipe in the palm of his left hand. Is that all? He asked. Every last word, by thunder, answered John. Refuse that, and you've seen the last of me but musket balls. Very good, said the captain, and now you'll hear me. If you come up one by one unarmed, I'll engage to clap you all in irons and take you home for a fair trial in England. If you won't, my name is Alexander Smollett. I've flown my sovereign's colors, and I'll see you all to Davy Jones. You can't find the treasure, you can't sail the ship, there's not a man among you fit to sail the ship. You can't fight us, Gray, there got away from 5 of you. Your ship's in iron, Master Silver, you're on the lee shore, and you'll find. I stand here and I'll tell you so. They're the last good words you'll get from me, for in the name of heavens I'll put a bullet in your back when I meet you next. Tramp, my lad, bundle out of this, please, hand over hand and double quick. Silver's face was a picture. His eyes started in his head with wrath. He shook the fire out of his pipe. Give me a hand up, he cried. Not I, returned the captain. Who'll give me a hand up, he roared. Not a man among us moved. Growling the foulest imprecations, he crawled along the sand till he got hold of the porch and could hoist himself again upon his crutch. Then he spat into the spring. There, he cried, that's what I think of ye. Before the hour's out, I'll stove in your old blockhouse like a rum punchin'. Laugh, by thunder, laugh. Before the hour's out, you'll laugh upon the other side. Them that'll die be the lucky ones. And with a dreadful oath, he stumbled off, plowed down the sand, and was helped across the stockade, after 4 or 5 minutes, by the man with the flag of truce. and disappeared in an instant afterwards among the trees. This is the end of chapter 20. Now, the name of the chapter was Silver's Embassy. Now, nowadays, we think of an embassy as a building where one country makes an embassy in another country and they send people back and forth, and it's a building where the representatives of one government meet another government in their own land. So there's a whole bunch of embassies in Washington. Russia has an embassy, Germany has an embassy, France has an embassy, Mexico has an embassy. There's just dozens of embassies in Washington. And the United States has embassies all over the world. We have embassies in Mexico, in Russia, in Germany, in France, in Italy, in all over the world. So that's what an embassy means now. Back in the day, an embassy was a group of people who went out to meet. So you have the embassy being the group of people who go out to meet the party that they're dealing with, as opposed to being the place where the parties who go out to meet dwell. So that's an interesting change. So Jim left his loophole. I don't know if you noticed that. Jim left his loophole. And there's a good reason why the captain wanted everybody to be at watch. Because if Silver comes and says, "Hey, flag of truce," and he comes in, everyone's going to be distracted watching Silver. And then pirates can sneak up to the sides of the fort, hide up against the wall away from the loopholes, wait until dark, hop over the fence, and do nasty things. But if you have people watching out the loopholes, people watching and making sure that they can't get close to the fort, then they can shout out of, "Hey, they're violating the truce." So Smollett trusted Silver. Silver offered them, "Hey, we'll give you half the supplies." So that might have been enough to last them until reinforcements got there in several months. Or that may have lasted them long enough, but you never can tell. So Ben Gunn is still in the action. I wonder what's going to happen next.